Last week, Legalweek, one of the world's largest and most anticipated annual legal technology and legal business conferences, announced it will be virtual in 2021. The conference will be rebranded as Legalweek Year and will be extended into a full year of events leading up to a resumption of the in-person conference in February 22. On today's special edition of LawNext, I am joined by Mark Freed, the president of events at ALM Media and the man in charge of Legalweek, to learn more details about the conference and what it means for attendees and exhibitors. Mark, welcome to LawNext.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
Yeah, good to see you. It's been a while. Well, it's been since Legalweek that I've seen you, I think. So good to see you.
It has. It's been a very long 8 months.
Yeah, I'm sure it has been. How have you been doing apart from all the difficulty of dealing with this?
Well, we're doing well. You know, I run events here at ALM, like you said. So obviously, it's been a challenging year. We are in the process now, I think, of really coming to the grips with the fact that we won't have any events in 2020. We moved most of the events out of the year. There are a few holdouts, not in the U.S., but a few holdouts in Dubai, one in the UK, and one in Sydney. And we had hoped to squeak through with still having those events in 2020, but it turns out that we'll have no live events in 2020. And the last event we would have had was in March of this year. So it's been a long grind.
A challenging year. Well, I'm sure the decision about what to do with Legalweek was probably a very difficult one. It's, as I said, it's a very much anticipated conference by people in all sectors of the legal industry and the legal profession. And we all look forward, for some crazy reason, going to New York in the middle of winter. But that's not going to happen this year. So what went into the decision? What was the kind of the thought process about deciding to take it virtual? Sure.
Well, I think for the first few months of 2020, as we sort of grappled with COVID, I think we had done what a lot of event organizers have done, which was to sort of chase the end of COVID. And we had events that were in March, that we dropped into June. In the second quarter, we really sort of spent some time pushing events out into the year, or in some cases postponing them entirely, but we hadn't really gotten to the point we felt we would have no live events in 2020 until much later. And as we sort of scrambled, and as I think a lot of other people in the event organization or event companies scrambled, we were forced to furlough some staff, and we had to, I think, really sort of regroup internally. And by doing that, we really focused on delivering the highest quality events that we could, either in person or virtually, to our audiences in 2020. And it really wasn't, I'd say, until probably the very beginning of Q3, early July, mid-July, that 2021 started to come into focus. And then what we're going to do in 2021. It was clear then that COVID was not just going to be a passing phase, that we would have to really address the needs both at the event level, but also really large within the hospitality industry. Travel has been a major factor. And all these things seem to really not have a likelihood of going back to normal or some sense of normalcy, especially in New York, where Legalweek would have been in New York at the Hilton. It just became very apparent to not have the event in February. So initially, our hopes were we'd be able to push the event a little bit later in the year, 2021. But as we sort of weighed the temperature of the industry, we spoke to some of our partners, we looked across the organization. Legalweek has a very, very strong footing for ALM in the first part of the year, in the first quarter. It really does, I think, set the tune for the year. And it didn't make sense for us to move it later in the year and not have it in the first half. And then we felt that if we moved it out of the window, say into the July, August timeframe, it would start to really jeopardize our ability to have a proper event in 2022. So we really started to look really closely at how could we take all of these factors into consideration. We have a lot of brands that are sort of anchored around that event. We have the American Lawyer, we have Corporate Counsel, we have the New York Law Journal. We have other events in the portfolio that are linked to it. We use it as a launching pad. We launched Legal Radar, Law.com International. And of course, it's an important part of the bigger company at large that has marketing services and information services. And so all of that really sort of came into play when we considered what to do. And we really wanted to service our market in a way we felt would represent our brands properly. And so going virtual ultimately became the right answer for us in 2021.
Yeah. And explain the decision that you've made, or explain what the format will be like, because you're not doing what a lot of conferences have said. Well, if we're going to go virtual, we're just going to take the same days we were going to meet and put them on Zoom basically, and call that the virtual conference. You've taken a different approach here. So could you elaborate a little bit on how you're going to lay this out?
Yes, absolutely. We have decided to go into essentially what would be 5 virtual events. Starting in the same dates we would have had the original conference, so February 2nd to 4th. I think it was actually the 1st to the 4th, now it's the 2nd to the 4th, but the same time frame. That's pretty typical. What you'll see is people move from in-person to virtual events, but we didn't think that was going to be enough. There's a lot of content, there's a lot of thought, and there's a lot of consideration, a lot of interaction that goes behind Legal Week, as with a lot of other conferences. And we've already been down the road with some of our other events. We're looking at these hybrid solutions. And so we didn't feel that just really having one event in February was going to really meet the needs of the entire market. We want to stay in front of our target market and our target market set. And so we felt by having 5 events, really all focused around the same topics and content, but going from February 2nd to 4th, then March 16th, April 13th, May 11th, I think I have those dates right, and July 13th to 14th, we can really come out with sort of a State of the Union, state of affairs kind of a situation in the early part of the year, get to sort of a mid-year focus, really talk about what's happened. We think it's a very, very, this industry has been certainly disrupted, as have most, but I think the legal industry has been impacted probably more so than even others. And I do think that by July of next year, we'll start to kind of emerge and we'll start seeing live events. So we felt that really focusing on the first half of next year made the most sense. It gave us the most exposure to our customers and to our vendors and to our subscribers and our readers and our attendees, and really concentrating in that period and not really overbearing, not having an overbearing event into 3 days. We tried to squeeze it all into a 3 or 4 day window. I just don't think people could have consumed it as much. And this gives us the opportunity to really let people see it live, let them view it on their own, at their own pace and on demand. Opens it up to a whole slew of people who may not have been able to go previously, and really expand our coverage. So we're excited about the opportunity coming into the year.
And I know that in the announcement of this, you said that you'll continue to tackle many of the same topics that you would have covered at the live event: legal automation, e-discovery and data science, legal operations, business of law, litigation and data science. Litigation, data science, and data privacy and cybersecurity, practice management, alternative legal services, and more. How will you break those up across events? Will certain events be focused on certain topics, or how will that work?
We had considered that, and we decided not to do that. And in fact, if you go into the website and look at our agenda, you'll see that each day or days it covers the gamut in terms of the topics you've covered. And the idea is for us to, we haven't in the past really been, I think, known as the e-discovery conference, and we spent a lot of time and effort to evolve into the other areas you talked about: legal ops and business strategies and data privacy and cybersecurity, et cetera. And so you'll see that broad approach across the days we've laid out. Some of it will be somewhat fluid. Obviously, if we have a high concentration on vendors or vendor interest in certain days, we could sort of start to skew that a little bit. But our approach is going to be to cover the waterfront on each of the events as we kind of move through the year. And our feeling is that it will be very, very dynamic. That February and March will be different than April and May, and that even with the same topic areas, there's just be so much going on that we'll have enough material and content for us to cover it in the periods that we've laid out here.
Yeah. What do you think this will mean for how will you be presenting the programming? Are you going to be using Zoom, or are you looking at other platforms, or is it going to be, something cobbled together in-house, or how are you going to do that?
Well, definitely not the latter. We're not going to cobble anything together in-house. I think as we all have, as industries, have moved into these virtual programs and these virtual deliverables, it's been a struggle. I think for the largest event organizers down to the smallest. And we have gone through several different event tech platforms, and we will use an event tech platform for Legal Week. We are looking at really enhancing the customer experience. We're very, very sensitive to the fact that people are sort of getting, I'd say, computer screen fatigue, content fatigue delivered through a Zoom format. So we will absolutely be looking at some of the most cutting edge legal event tech we can find and leverage. But more importantly, I think, is to sort of find some diversity in how we approach the content. And I think if you went to an event, a Legal Week in the past, you would have seen, I think, certainly diversity there, but we need to start to figure out ways to keep it compelling, to increase the production value within the content delivery set, and ensure that that all of our attendees, whether there's as alumni or someone who's new to Legal Week or a sponsor or exhibitor, that they come in and they are just really impressed and wowed by how we deliver the content. It's an important component for us going into 2021.
Yeah. What about the programming itself? How will you preserve the quality of the program that you would have been presenting, of the content that you would have been presenting at the live event in this virtual environment?
Sure. Well, I think that's probably the easiest of all the things we're trying to do. We have a very strong relationship with the industry. Legal Week, as you know, Legal Tech has been around for some time. And we're very, very closely with the global newsroom at ALM. So the editorial team and the journalists within ALM and the programming team work really closely together. The idea that I think in a lot of ways, the integrity and the quality of the content, whether it's delivered in person or virtually, there's no real risk there. If we had really strong content before, we'll have it again. And I think we have. If anything, it opens up more windows and doors for us, because we're able to get people who maybe couldn't make it to the event previously to speak, and now they can, so long as we're in the right time zone. But I think that in terms of the quality of the content, that we will be able to preserve, if not improve, the quality year on year.
Yeah. Speaking of getting people to the event, how are you handling the registration fees this year for 2021?
Well, that's been an interesting sort of question for us to really address. Previously there were a lot of different price points for Legal Week. It was a sort of aggregation of a bunch of conferences, and you could buy a master pass or other passes. And we were moving towards a single price point for all of the content when we got hit with COVID. Looking at 2021, there's basically going to be two price points. There's going to be anyone who can come in and view the content, which would be one price point, which would be free, to view it in real time as we present it. And there'll be an on-demand price point. And the on-demand price point is $2.99 right now. Obviously, we'll stage that up as we kind of get closer to the event. And that enables you to view the content on demand and get the CLE.
But that's significant that anybody who wants to attend Legal Week will be able to do so for free if they just want the live content and see it that way. Yeah.
That's right. And I think from our perspective, looking at Legal Week in 2021, we really had to sort of take our blinders off and look at Legal Week and really the scalability, the longevity, the viability of Legal Week beyond 2021. And so really what we're trying to do is make introductions to the market at large, people in the past who maybe have not attended Legal Week, people who have not been able to interact with our global newsroom, people who are not familiar with our content, not familiar with ALM or any of our other products or offerings across the entire organization, and give them an opportunity to really see what ALM has to offer as a part of the Legal Week, Legal Year, and capture those people within our sort of marketing efforts. And then as we move into 2022, we will sort of go back to a more traditional in-person event and in-person marketing and in-person sort of runway, but hopefully having really expanded the exposure of Legal Week and all the products and services and other elements of ALM that go along with it.
One of the anchors of Legal Week has always been the vendors who exhibit there and who participate in programs there and throw events there. And what will this mean for them?
Well, this has also been an interesting question for us to grapple with. We have gone through a number of transitions in 2020 a big chunk of what we were doing in 2020 was trying to migrate vendors in situations we had events with vendors that were anticipating going on site as either sponsors or exhibitors. We spent a lot of time and effort basically trying to convert them from an in-person event to a virtual event. And it was very, very difficult and tricky, I think, for our sales team, but also for the sponsoring exhibitor. They hadn't bought that, and that's not what they wanted, and now they had to go back and get all the right authorizations to kind of buy what we're suggesting now. So our feeling now is we're going to offer to all of our sponsors and exhibitors exactly the same position, their booth placement, and or their sponsorships in 2021. We're going to sort of airlift that into 2022. So we're still sort of ignore 2021 for the time being and say, you know what, if you've committed to 2021, we're now going to just honor that in 2022. Everything will be the same. And now we're going to roll out what this means for what does Legalweek 2021 look like. And so you can see on our website, you can see that we've got these 8 days of programming essentially. And the sponsors, really sponsors, we don't have exhibitors the same way we had previously. They will be able to engage the attendee base just as they have in the past. It'll just be through a virtual format. So we'll have a branded channel. If you're sort of an online exhibitor, you'll be able to have all of your materials and then sort of have your one-on-one conversations with the attendees. But as important, or really more important, I think, in a virtual setting, is their ability to present hard-hitting, substantive content to our attendees and their target market set.
I know that I've talked to a number of vendors who have participated in other virtual conferences already this year, where there have been these kind of virtual exhibit halls or opportunities to engage virtually with the vendors, and from what I'm hearing, they haven't been too happy with the experience. They felt that it's been difficult to get people who are attending the conference programming to come into their rooms and engage with them. Have you thought about that problem, and do you have a way to address it?
I do think about that problem every day, and there's really no sort of magic pixie dust here that we can sort of sprinkle on it and make them come into their booths. I think what exhibitors and sponsors need to realize, and what we're realizing, is this is a whole new environment. We can give you a lot more exposure to a lot more people, and we can really get you in front of people in terms of speaking about a content that's very, very, or a subject that's very, very important and substantive to the attendees as much as it is to the vendor, and really sort of engage them in a very rich panel and get them in front of a very broad and very wide audience. The question then becomes, how do you move them from that setting into more of a one-on-one setting? How do you get them from sort of that the ballroom to their booth in a virtual setting? And we are really working on that. We're trying to figure out ways to structure the program so that people are more likely to kind of go from a session into a sponsored opportunity where people can speak, one-on-one. We are really looking at thinking about calendarizing and how do you calendarize this kind of thing. Part of it really, we need to really, I think, educate and work more closely with our sponsors and get them to also think about scheduling these conversations with people that will be in the sessions. But it's got to be a mutual approach. We can drive the people to the event tech. We can really, I think, get a very, very high level of engagement from the attendees. And then we need to partner at the ALM level. We need to partner with our sponsors and exhibitors to really work with them to get the right people in front of them just before, just after their sessions, so we're able to really schedule and provide them a little bit more of a structured anticipation after the event. I think in the past, if you went to a live event, you have your session, and you go to your booth, and people will come by and kind of pluck them off the floor a little bit. It's harder in a virtual setting, and we have to really work towards those solutions. The benefit for us is we have 40 or 50 conferences across legal conferences and regulated events, and so we're really fine-tuning that approach and figuring out more and more ways to engage our attendees on behalf of our sponsors and get them to interact directly with our sponsors within the format and within the event tech.
Yeah, well, and the other thing you lose with a virtual conference is just the kind of the serendipity of people wandering through the exhibit hall and coming across a vendor maybe they had never even heard of before.
Yes.
But taking a few moments to learn more about the product and can be the beginning of a beautiful relationship when that happens. But
it could. And I think I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think that virtual events are the end all be all, and they will always or forever be a part of what we're trying to do. I think there is a lot of elements around virtual events that have the ability to sort of stay in the industry. But I think all of our preferences to go back to a live setting, all of our preferences to have in-person events. And I think there's a lot of benefits to being in person that you just can't replicate in a virtual setting. But I do think that we are able to provide the value and drive the attendees, the quality attendees. And a big part of what we're able to do is launch something like law.com Barometer that enables us to really hone in on the target market, continue to put content in front of our target markets and engage those target markets, and then follow that up with a virtual environment around Legalweek, legal tech that leverages all those touch points. And by doing that, I think we're able to get more attendees to engage with our sponsors and exhibitors.
Yeah, you mentioned law.com Barometer. We haven't talked about that earlier in this interview. Can you explain what that is and what that has to do with Legalweek?
Sure. So in 2020, we were fortunate enough that we were able to launch sort of a live global newsroom. ALM has a global newsroom. Obviously, we put out a lot of products, and it worked very well. We were able to get our editors-in-chief and journalists and editors from across ALM at Legalweek, Legal Tech, and we have a lot of brands like the American Lawyer or Corporate Counsel or New York Law Journal, a lot of touch points in the industry. And in doing that, I think it became very apparent that the global newsroom was very, very well received, both within ALM and by the industry. So law.com Barometer is really a weekly briefing that we're pushing out that will really sort of go in depth on a certain topic. This week we did it on ALSPs, and we'll see them coming out pretty regularly. It's sort of our first touch point. We'll follow up with other format types of roundtables discussions. And it really is an opportunity for the editorial team to engage at a sort of a broader level with our audience, and really sort of culminating in these either in-person or virtual opportunities to interact with our journalists and our brands.
Yeah. And one other aspect that of course you can't replicate with a virtual conference is just the socializing that goes on, the networking that goes on at the live conference. Are you going to be trying to address that in any way or facilitate that in any way?
Yeah. We have been doing other events where we brought in MCs, we brought in some comedians, we've done awards programs. We've done some events in the UK where we actually had a sponsor send people wine and wine tasting. So there is ways to introduce a social component within the virtual setting. It's a little awkward. I think it depends on who you are and what your personality type is in terms of how open you are to these kinds of things. But we are trying to diversify the experience so that as an attendee, you don't sort of lose interest and then just fall off. And so we're constantly challenging ourselves to increase our engagement across all of our events, because what works in one industry could work in another. It may not, but each event has its own personality and personality type. But we're playing with the format and looking at ways to maintain that sort of social element that's so hard to replicate. It is so hard, and I would love to hear anyone who's had success doing this to replicate a cocktail hour or a reception or a dinner. It's very, very hard. And so I think what we have to do is not really try to replicate it. It will come back. We think we'll have those events, obviously, later in next year and certainly in 2022. But we have to sort of ensure we can provide a value deliverable to our vendors and our attendees where they think it was worth their time. And the biggest factor right now we're sort of competing around is their time, because whereas previously you can argue it's actually easier to get someone to leave their office and go to Legalweek, and then we had them locked in that hotel as long as they were there. Now you're constantly bombarded by emails and by phone calls, and every other distraction. If you're working from home, you've got other factors from home. And I think what we need to do is figure out ways to deliver our content and deliver our program in a way that's compelling, and not try necessarily just replicate all the pieces that we would have had in a live setting, but make it on its own compelling enough that people feel it's worth staying from start to finish through the event.
So having made this decision to go virtual in 2021, what parts of this are you most excited about? And what parts are you most worried about?
Well, I'm excited about the launch in February. I think I'm excited about sort of Legal Week, Legal Year, and seeing how that resonates. The Law.com Barometer to me is very, very exciting. We're watching that closely, and that will be our primary mechanism to go to market in 2021 for the 2022 event. So that's, to me, the most exciting touch point. ALM, it's a structured company. I run events, and so the opportunities to really work across the organization are very, very exciting. So when you have the editorial team as engaged as they are, and other people, within the organization as engaged on the success of Law.com, on the success of Law.com, but also on Legal Week, that to me is very exciting. I look forward to that. What am I worried about? Well, I worry about virtual fatigue, frankly, not just for Legal Week, but for the event industry at large. We are coming up to a solid year pretty soon of virtual events. It behooves all of us to really figure out ways to be that much more compelling and that much more interesting. I don't know, how much more you can do before people say, I've had enough of staring at my computer all day. At the end of the day, you are still staring at your computer or your phone or some other device. So that does worry me. And I think by pushing the Legal Week format virtually and focusing on the first year, we'll consolidate and condense that and be super sensitive to it. And then, our pivot point will be in Q3 next year to go back to promoting and supporting in-person events.
And so the plan is to be back at the Hilton next year, or at least in 2022.
In 2022, in February of 2022, our plan is to be back at the Hilton. Yes.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed that happens. All right. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to point out about this, Mark, that we haven't had a chance to talk about?
No. We're excited about the launch of the Global Newsroom and continuing that touch point with the event. Frankly, in this environment where we are today, it's so dynamic still. I think COVID is really still revealing itself in a lot of ways. The president has COVID now. Who would have thought? And so just when you think it can't get any worse, things are not quite where we'd hope they would be, 7 or 8 months after sort of COVID first hit the U.S. I think that planning right now for everyone in the industry is critical. And so we will be planning out through 2021 into 2022 across the entire portfolio. And we're optimistic about the outcomes for 2021. At the same time, recognizing that we're all looking forward to going back to in-person events.
Yeah. Well, Mark Freed, thank you very, very much for taking the time to fill us in on the future of Legal Week and what to expect for Legal Week year coming up in 2021.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me.